Preview season continues, and today it's all about the Missouri Tigers. Another year for Eli Drinkwitz at the helm of this program that he has simply turned into a perennial contender in the SEC. Injuries were a factor last year. Will injuries play a part this year, or could it be something else that might be a slight hindrance or something they need to work through over the course of this season? We'll talk about everything, including all the changes at the coordinator positions and all the changes around this roster as well. Welcome into Armchair Analysis. And thank y'all so much. I want to lead with that. You guys have pushed this channel beyond what I thought it was going to be, especially when we restarted. And we are now just 11 subscribers away from 250. All I ask, hit the like, subscribe buttons, stick around here because we got a lot of content coming your way 7 days a week. And it's been a lot of fun so far. I've had a really good time doing this, and still working on trying to get ahead. Unfortunately, things have just been very busy. Unfortunately, when you work a full-time job and then do this on the side and try to make it into a full-time job, things can be a little bit complicated. So I thank y'all so much for tuning in. I thank you guys for being here, and look forward to carrying on. Again, just 11 away from 250 subscribers. Something I didn't think would happen. I didn't think 250 people would want to listen to me run my mouth about college football, but here we are. And again, I say thank you. So with all that said, let's dig into the Missouri Tigers 2026 preview. And look, when we go into these, we always look back at what this team was. And last year in regular season, they were 8-4. They finished 8-5 with that loss to Virginia in the Gator Bowl, if I'm not mistaken. This was a team that fought through a lot of injuries. Bo Prabula got injured at one point. Matt Zollers came in and played okay, but certainly you could feel the difference, especially because Zollers is more of a pocket passer quarterback versus what Prabula was. So they went and made a change there. They also made a change at offensive coordinator. Chip Lindsey takes over after a year at Michigan that was less than stellar over there, and that's not his fault particularly. There were plenty of problems at Michigan beyond just Chip Lindsey. But can both of these guys take some steps forward? We're talking about Austin Simmons coming in as well, which I think could be a good thing or a bad thing. Simmons started last year as a starter at Ole Miss before getting injured, and really the injury opened up the door for Trinidad Chambliss, who is a Heisman contender going into 2026. But Austin Simmons was a bit turnover prone in his few games that he played. 4 touchdowns, 5 picks. You're going to want to change those numbers around. And I think Chip Lindsey, paired up with Garrett Riley as the quarterback coach, might just be the duo you need to make that happen. We'll talk a little more about that when we go through portal and the offensive projections. But before we do that, let's go ahead and take a look at what this team was last year. The stats show a few different stories. This team could run the ball with anybody. They were a top 10 rushing offense. As a matter of fact, they ranked 8th in rushing offense. They were 104th in passing offense, and really it was just a matter of, again, injuries. I felt like this team really took steps back when Prabula got injured, and it never fully recovered over the course of the season, which unfortunately led to a handful of losses. The defense, on the other hand, was top 20 in every category. 17th was their worst ranking. That's in points per game. 5.5 penalties per game, very well disciplined, and just under half a turnover lost in terms of a turnover margin per game. You pair that up with a 23rd ranked recruiting class and 23 commitments, and a 20th ranked portal class with 30 commitments. It feels as though this is a program that's going to continue to take those steps in the right direction. How far in the right direction can they go? Because here's the other thing that people are not talking about, at least not enough with this Missouri team, because they are good and they are talented, and what Eli Drinkwitz has done warrants optimism. It absolutely it commands optimism, really, for this program. But there is one glaring problem to this team in 2026, and that is the schedule is much more difficult than it was last year. It just is, plain and simple. You don't get a lot of the bottom 5 teams in the conference this year. As a matter of fact, Kentucky's probably the worst offense or the worst team you're going to get in this SEC play, and they very well might be good by November. But I actually dare to say Mississippi State might be the toughest, but you play them on the road. This is a much more difficult schedule, one of the toughest in the country, and we'll talk more about that as we go along. But a lot of playoff contenders, a lot of conference championship contenders, and truth be told, a lot of change around this program that just begs at least a little bit of concern. I'm not going to say full-on alarm, but it begs some concern for what this year might be and what the ceiling might look like for this Missouri Tigers program. Moving on to the offense, and while we do that, I'm going to grab my water because I can just feel it coming. It is a necessity. I set this over here in case I need it again. This this offense has some potential. And again, I talk about it. Austin Simmons, 4 touchdowns, 5 picks. But the reason that he would be the starter over a Matt Zollers is his athletic ability. He is a quarterback who can make things happen with his legs. And when you pair that up with Ahmad Hardy, who I assume, and I'm as far as I'm aware, is going to be healthy by the time the season starts up. Even if not, Jamal Roberts is a really solid second running back and could have been a 1,000-yard rusher anywhere else if he wasn't behind Ahmad Hardy last year. You pair Austin Simmons up with either of these running backs, and I feel like this run game takes that step forward to the next level because now you have to worry about the quarterback position, which is just not there with Matt Zollers. Even though I am a big fan of Matt Zollers, I have multiple times said that I would probably prefer to start him, but I also like a different style of offense than Chip Lindsey and Elijah Drinkwitz do. That's just the honest truth. So what I would do is very different than what they should do, which is, I think, start Austin Simmons. I've come around on that over the course of time, and I think that that is going to be the move they make. Here's the thing. I think the leash will be short, and it should be. Turnovers have been a problem for Austin Simmons. Again, 4 touchdowns and 5 interceptions last season. While he did have 744 yards in his limited time on the field, I just feel as though those numbers have to come down. That they just have to. Matt Zollers, on the other hand, in his limited time, 500 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Just a little more decisive in the passing game, which could be a good thing as well because this wide receiver room is really solid. And it starts with Donovan Olugbode, who comes back 400 yards last year, 2 touchdowns. Caleb Goody and Caden Lee come over. Caden Lee comes from Ole Miss. Should be, I think, an early favorite target for Austin Simmons just due to the chemistry already built at Ole Miss. But Caleb Goody, on top of that, was a really solid receiver at Colorado State, went to Cincinnati, doubled down on it, proved he was a good receiver there, can jump into this offense and I think be a really productive piece to the offense. You also have Brett Norfleet, who I think is going to be a really solid piece at tight end, with 2 other tight ends who at any point can come in and play a significant amount and be a probably significant difference makers. But Norfleet is by far the starter. This is a good receiver room. And so it just comes down to decision making. Because the offensive line, outside of Logan Reichert, who is the one guy who has any relative concern to him, and it's simply because he is less experienced. He's only played 1 snap last year. So you're going to have to see what Reichert can do and how significant of a playmaker or difference maker he can be at right tackle. But Caden Green, one of the best lineman prospects in college football this year. And then you got Zach Owens, Dominic Gaitis, and Curtis Pegler. This is a really experienced offensive line. And even behind Logan Reichert, Luke Work, who is projected as the backup right tackle, comes over from Mississippi State, 150 snaps last year, at least a significant amount of experience. This is a place of success for the Missouri program. They are really good in the trenches offensively. It's just the way I like Elijah Drinkwitz has done it, going all the way back to App State. I mean, this team just wins at the line of scrimmage. And I think that's going to continue here. I'd be really hard pressed to see it go any other way. Ahmad Hardy, again, I think is going to be fully healthy. I think we're talking our first Heisman contender of this entire preview season right here at Missouri and Ahmad Hardy. Assuming he's fully healthy, and we're hoping for that because obviously what's gone on this offseason with him being a victim of a shooting earlier in the offseason is certainly nothing to bat an eye at. It's certainly something that we're going to have to keep our eyes on. But it seems as though things have made the right amount of progress to see him as a significant player in this 2026 season. Even if not, again, Jamal Roberts was a guy that, like I said, anywhere else in the country, he's a 1,000-yard rusher, barring maybe 5 or 6 programs who had top-tier running backs. He could jump into this lineup, and I don't want to say replicate what Ahmad Hardy did, because 1,600 yards leading the SEC is no small feat. But he could come in and be a 1,300-yard rusher at any time if he needs to be the starter. This is a really good running back room. Again, it goes hand in hand with this offensive line. Offense is not so much of a concern outside of the quarterback position. And it's just inexperience, truly inexperience. And with Austin Simmons specifically, decision making. Can he make the right choices? Talked about it already. Chip Lindsey and Garrett Riley as a quarterback coach. I think things will go the right way. I would not, and I would heavily suggest that you ignore what Chip Lindsey's offense looked like last year at Michigan and look more back to his North Carolina offenses. You're going to be disappointed if you're looking for failure for this Missouri team on offense and going to point it to Chip Lindsey. It's just not going to happen. Moving to the defense, and Corey Batoon had, I mean, look, this was one of the best defensive teams last year, right? We talked about it, top 20 in every major category, including a top 10 total defense ranking. Here's the thing. The secondary, specifically the cornerback room, is full of transfers, and how quickly are these guys going to step in? My favorite player on this entire defense, as a matter of fact, comes from that nickel position, Elijah Dotson. Comes over from Michigan, was a freshman last year, played a little bit, and was impactful at times. But I think a full year as on the field in general is going to set him up to be the number one cornerback on this defense next year. He is the guy that I think the entire future of this defense might be able to build around, because as you see here, there are a ton of seniors. Dotson is one of those guys that I think can make a big impact in the future, and I'm excited to watch how he plays and how he develops over the course of 2026, leading for 27. With that said, this is still a really good defense, and this is not a team that I think you need to worry about so much in how they play defense. My question marks come from this defensive line. When you lose Damon Wilson and Zion Young, it begs the question, who steps up? Who becomes the next game wrecker defensive lineman, and specifically defensive end, in this 4-2-5 system, or base 4-2-5 system? Langdon Kitchen was okay, but didn't record a sack last year. Darius Smith, who's playing the jack position, recorded 4 sacks, and I think that's the name you're going to be watching, is Darius Smith. Coming over 16 tackles, 5.5 for loss, 4 sacks last year for this Mizzou team. Expect him to maybe take that kind of a role as a Damon Wilson, Zion Young, who can get into the backfield. Now, that's not saying Langdon Kitchen can't, and that's not saying that maybe somebody behind them, a Jaden Jones who transfers in, or maybe even Malik Bryant, another transfer, couldn't step up and take that role. But those are the two that I would expect to see on the edges. When you go over the middle, Jalen Marshall, Marquise Gracial, both of these guys, 17 tackles and 16 tackles apiece. Neither one of them had too many tackles for loss. As a matter of fact, there's 3 combined between the two. There's no sacks between the two, or half a sack, I should say. With that said, how does this tackle room look? Well, it's really inexperienced. That's the bottom line. Can these guys get to where they need to be? Absolutely. Will this be as good of a run game as last year, or run defense as last year? No. I think that the answer will be no. And if they are, then does that then kind of take away from what they were in the past game last year? The answer will be yes, because I think you're going to have to, when you delegate more resources, specifically the linebacker room, to the run game, you automatically take away from what you can do in the pass game. And the way these guys play defense, that is kind of the ultimate expectation, is that these linebackers are going to be really good in the run game. It's going to open up some things over top, and you're going to play a lot of teams that will be willing to throw the ball. The matchup problems, I think, are there, just plain and simple. We can talk a little bit about it. Robert Woodyard transfers in last year, 67 tackles, 7 for loss, 2 sacks. Nicholas Rodriguez, 62 tackles, 4 for loss, and 1.5 sacks. These are your 2 linebackers. You could talk about Dante McClellan, who played a little bit and recorded 7 tackles and a pick. You could talk about Jeremiah Beasley. But Woodyard and Rodriguez are your 2 that you would expect to see probably for the majority of downs. Looking into the secondary, Jaleel Florence, Chris Graves Jr., Elijah Dotson, those are your top 3. Sione Laulea, I could expect to see a little bit out of just because of his general college experience. He's a senior this year. Could expect something from him, but I would say those are probably your 4. Nick DeLoach did play a little bit, and it was in this system last year. So if there is a cornerback, he's the lone in the top 6 who might see some significant playing time, but I would expect it to be the 3 that you see on the screen. Santana Banner and Trayan Greco are your 2 starting safeties, with Jackson Hancock and then Kinsley Luador Faustin coming over as well in the portal. The safety room and just the secondary in general, a lot of inexperience. The most experienced player happens to be Santana Banner, 59 tackles last year, 1 for loss and a pick. Behind him, it's Chris Graves. Like, this is a group that I expect to see maybe a little bit of a step backwards, and this is where I feel like there's probably the most concern, because now we're going to transition this over to the schedule, and this is what I'm talking about, is the fact that they're going to play a lot of teams that are willing to throw the ball around the yard, and I think we're going to see a step backwards just in this pass defense. Look, you can talk what you want about Kansas, and I think Kansas on the road Friday night game is going to be an interesting one. I'm not expecting them to lose. I took my medicine last year when I picked them to lose this game. I'm not doing that again. But what I can say, Mississippi State, Florida, Texas A&M, 3 teams to start conference play that will throw the ball. Now, Florida's going to be interesting because Buster Faulkner and how good this quarterback position will play is a big question mark. Otherwise, the other 2, you can certainly expect to throw the ball and move the ball down the field. Ole Miss isn't afraid to do it. Arkansas won't be afraid to do it. Texas and Georgia, you can guarantee they're going to be sound. Kentucky, I'm telling you, this is a team that you should be scared of. Anybody should be. And then Oklahoma and John Mateer, a healthy John Mateer. Speaking of Heisman contenders, he's back in that conversation. This is a difficult schedule. I would argue one of the toughest in college football outside of maybe what Texas has to go up against. This is difficult. And it's going to bring a lot of questions to how legit this team can be. The win total sits at 6.5. The SEC title odds sit at plus 3,500. Natty odds at plus 10,000. And honestly, if you make the playoff out of this schedule, you're probably a favorite at that point, because this is a murderer's row down the stretch. Talking Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Texas, Georgia, and Oklahoma. 5 of the last 7 games. This is going to be a tough one. So let's go ahead and talk about it with a 12-game preview. All right, so going through this schedule, we'll go ahead and just knock the win out right there for Arkansas Pine Bluff. Not really much to worry about there. Biggest takeaway with that game is just see what the quarterbacks will do. I would expect. Now, I'm not guaranteeing this because I do know that Austin Simmons was the favorite coming out of camp, but expect to see both quarterbacks at least a little bit in some regard. I don't know if that means that Matt Zollers only plays garbage time or if Matt Zollers will play a little bit, but I would expect to see both quarterbacks, 2 guys with as little experience as these guys have, in a game like this in front of them to kind of be able to make that decision. Take your shot. I think it would be okay. But I could see a world where it's just Austin Simmons. That would be fine too. Moving on, Friday night on the road against Kansas. I think this is a chance where they can just go ahead and win, simply because I think they win in the trenches, and that's where they're going to dominate a lot of games, at least the games that they should win. Those are the games that they'll dominate because of what they do at the line of scrimmage. Speaking of that, they'll go out and beat Troy. And then they'll go on the road to Starkville and face Mississippi State. And I think that this will just come down to an overall talent perspective, and specifically, again, winning at that line of scrimmage. I think it'll be a win. They'll start 4-0. Coming back home and facing Florida and John Summerall and this Florida Gators program, a really big opportunity for them on the road. And I think that this right here is where they will fall for the first time. Missouri, that is. I just think this Florida team is able to get the job done, and I trust this defense a lot to really make some things happen. I think Florida takes that one. You move on and look at Texas A&M, and I think that A&M is going to be able to get the win as well. Marcel Reed, talking, again, Heisman contenders or Heisman hopefuls. Marcel Reed is one of them, and I think that team, the way they're able to move the ball on the ground, one of the bigger matches at the line of scrimmage in this season, especially the early part of the season for Missouri. I just think it's kind of one of those taste of your own medicine type of things, and you move on. Going on the road to face Ole Miss, this is just a game where I feel like Trinidad Chambliss, another Heisman hopeful, comes out, does what he needs to do. Not only that, Kewan Lacey, Heisman hopeful. There's multiple guys on this Ole Miss team, plus the defense I think remains largely the same thanks to Pete Golding staying as the head coach. This is where, again, things just get difficult here for Missouri for a little bit. You go on the road to face Arkansas. I think this is a chance to get back on track, especially after a bye week. This is just a good opportunity to get one back in your pocket and move on at 5-3 to face Texas at home. I think Arch Manning takes a big step forward this year, and I would expect that to really entail a lot of really just better decision making. And I don't want to say better decision making, but just being able to create bigger plays thanks to his decision making. A really smart player, a really good athlete. Hopefully, we'll get to see that a little more this year. I think things, especially early in the year last year, took time to get going. As for Missouri, I just think that they'll struggle against the Texas defense, which is supposed to be one of the best in the country. I think that it'll be a win for Texas. On the road against Georgia, a tough environment. This is easily the most difficult environment of the year, and that's no disrespect to Vaught Hemingway or Booth Stadium or the W. Reynolds Razorback Stadium. This is just the toughest environment, and they're going to go out, and I think they're going to struggle and fall, and it'll be a 5-5 record going into the final two games, where I think they beat Kentucky at home. I think this is a good opportunity to get a win, get to bowl eligibility. And then senior day against Oklahoma. Talked about John Mateer. I think that this Oklahoma team is ready to be a playoff team and maybe even a national championship contender this year, which leads to a 6-6 record, 3-6 in SEC play, which is really just a 1-game difference from last year, given the fact that this is an added game, a 9-game SEC schedule. But I just think that this is not so much of a negative, and I don't want this to be taken as a dig at this Missouri team, because I think there's a ceiling for this team, probably of 8-4. I think they could probably replicate last year and go 5-4 in conference play. I just don't know that I buy into it. I think that there are so many uncertainties, especially around the teams that are worse on the schedule, or on paper at least not as good, being Mississippi State, Kentucky, Arkansas, Florida. Florida being the most probably even matched game. But on top of that, the teams that are at the top, you play a couple of them on the road, and then you get a couple of them at home. And it kind of just muddies things up a little bit for the ability to really be a true contender at any point this year. Unfortunately, I think this is an under on the win total, and I certainly don't buy anything on conference championships or national championship. Somebody had to get the short end of the stick on scheduling. That's just how it works, especially when you have loaded conferences like the SEC and Big Ten. And when somebody gets the short end of the deal, unfortunately, they have a down year. I don't think this is a cause for concern. I don't think this is a panic button or any reason to hit a panic button or even any kind of warning, nothing. This is just what happens when you draw a bad hand. You get a schedule like this that's just going to be tough to work around. Sure, I could be low. I think I'm predicting the floor. 5-7 might be the very bottom for this team. But I don't know. I don't see anything that jumps off the page other than Ahmad Hardy, who I've mentioned is a Heisman contender. But beyond that, I don't know where this team really sticks out and becomes a legitimate contender. And that's the difference between, again, being 6-6 and likely 8-4. If there's somebody that can jump out and be that kind of a contender, maybe they do push closer to being a playoff team. I just don't think it's in the cards in 2026. I think there's a lot of question marks. And I'm not fully bought into Austin Simmons. It's not a dig. It's not he's just bad. No, we've seen him be turnover prone. And a young quarterback with not a lot of experience going to another SEC program where, yeah, they're not going to play in a ton of tough environments, because thankfully the road games are at least nice to them. I don't know how many upsets they're going to pull at home either. Maybe one, maybe 2 at most. That's still only 8 wins. So I think this is going to be a disappointing year for Missouri fans, but if you understand what is happening around the program and in the building that could go on, it's not a panic button type of year. So I thank you all for tuning in. I'm sorry. Go ahead and tell me where I'm wrong. By all means, I'm ready for it. Comment section is open to you. Let me know what I may have missed, what you might have liked me to talk about a little differently or better, or maybe something I just flat out missed on. Hey, that does happen. Believe it or not, I'm not one of those that's going to tell you that I'm perfect and right all the time, because I'm not. But I'd love to know what you guys think. Missouri fans, you know your team better than I do. It's hard to cover 138 teams, but we try our best. And sometimes we have our misses. And maybe this could be one of those places where I do miss. So I appreciate y'all so much for tuning in. I appreciate y'all, again, with all the support throughout the preview season so far. We return again tomorrow with Cal, which should be fun. This is a team that I'm higher on than I think a lot of people are, so I'm excited to get into what the Cal Golden Bears might have in front of them in year 1 for Tosh Lupoy. So we'll talk about them. Make sure if you're new around here, leave a like, subscribe, comment down below so you don't miss a single video here on the channel. Check us out on social media, over on Discord, and on Spotify. And we'll see y'all tomorrow with another episode of Armchair Analysis. Preview season, the Cal Golden Bears.